Welcome back to another episode of Holy Banter. I'm Christina Steele,
And I'm Andrea Simpson.
and remember you can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and our parish app. So today we have with us our parish revival headline speaker, Marcellino D'Ambrosio, who we are going to call Dr. Italy because it's a lot simpler.
Yes. Italy, that Christina had you in class,
Yes.
and thankfully you gave her an A+. I was very concerned about that.
Yes, 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 but if anybody wants the real scoop, like how Christina was as a student,
Yes,
just
we do.
see me after the parish mission,
Okay.
you know?
That was many years ago.
That's right, right, right.
Yeah, we
Buy
got to
me
go
a
to,
buy me a cup of coffee or a beer, and I'll tell everything.
we got to go out to Israel too, which was such a blessed trip.
It was, and I wanna invite everyone in the parish to come with me because I'm gonna go again
When are you
this
going?
fall. I'm going this fall, October, November.
Oh, my husband wants to go, so we might be signing up for that.
We would love to have you. We
Yeah.
would love to have you. It's really time to get back there
And you went
and to
back
visit.
this past fall too, right?
I did. I brought one of the first groups back to the Holy Land from America, and it was really wonderful. We had the run of the place.
Yeah, I bet.
No lines, no lines. Yeah, but it was totally safe, and everyone was so happy to see us.
I
So we were
bet.
celebrities there. Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So I was curious reading your bio. One, love that you're from Providence, Rhode Island. My grandma is from there too. But I saw that you were in a band when you were 16, and I am dying to know what
I
band
was
it
in a lot of bands. Okay, a lot of bands. Rhode Island is a very
is.
Italian place. There's a lot of ethnicity there, Portuguese, Irish, of course, but it's one of the Italian strongholds in our country. So one of my bands was La Pasta Blues Band. I like that.
Nice.
And another one was Noah's Ark. And it had nothing to do with us being very religious and biblical, but it had to do with the fact that the trombone player's name was Noah Clark. So that's why
Oh,
we call the band Noah's
Very
Ark.
nice.
And that was a band that played in nightclubs, and, you probably wouldn't have heard of it, but we actually were, pretty big in New England in our day, you know?
oh, that's
And then
cool.
I had a conversion, and I started listening to Gregorian chant, but then realized that that wasn't the greatest means of evangelization necessarily, so I helped form a Catholic rock band, which was very unconventional in the 1980s, and it was called Crossroads, and that's the beginning of the Crossroads Initiative. It was a band that went around the country to high school and college students, but also to adult audiences and parish audiences and all sorts of audiences. And we shared our stories, our testimonies between songs. So it was a creative way of sharing the gospel.
That's really
That's
neat.
amazing.
Yeah.
So, when you started with music, you're saying it was secularly based-ish, even
Yes, it
though it
was.
wasn't Noah's Ark?
Yeah, yeah, it
Oh,
wa yeah, my love for music came from the fact that my dad was a jazz piano player, my mom was a professional ballroom dancer, kind of like Dancing with the Star type, and, yeah, so I was in I wanted to be in show business, I didn't wanna be an accountant or work in an office or, nothing against accountants and offices, but I just wanted, action and glory and stardom and adventure, so I started playing professionally very young. I was only 13 when I first started
Wow.
getting paid for playing the bass
Wow.
guitar. And yeah, so that's kind of what got me into music. And then I fell in love with Jesus in a deeper way. I was going to mass my whole life. I never stopped going to mass, and but I didn't get up every morning for Jesus. That
okay.
wasn't the driving force of my life until at age 16. I met some people for whom Jesus was not just a part of their life, but the center of their lives. And that made a huge difference. They were full of joy. And I never encountered joy before as a factor in religion. Like, to me, religion was a chore, and the
Mm.
joy, if it came after about
Here's heaven.
1,000 years of purgatory when you finally got into heaven, and that's kind of like that was like my idea of what it meant to be Catholic, paying your dues and, trying to have as much fun as you could, legitimately, and if you kind of cross over the line, then there's always confession. Praise God for the confession. So, anyway, at age 16, I met people who were just in love with Jesus, and he was their passion, and the adventure started now, and joy began now. Maybe it wasn't fulfilled completely in this life for sure, but it began now. So, when I tasted that joy for the first time, I knew that it was much greater than any joy I'd get from being in the limelight on stage. So, I kind of put down the guitar and picked up my Bible and started following the Lord. Ended up in the seminary for a while, discerned I wasn't called to be a priest, but I was called to do lay ministry. So that kind of led to evangelization and a Catholic rock band and a degree in theology. And but I'm not really the typical academic.
Mm.
You know what I mean? I'm not the
Mhm.
bookish academic who's an introvert. Quite the
Interesting.
contrary.
So,
Yeah.
where did you meet these people that had all this Catholic joy?
I met them in school. I
Hmm.
the 2 of my and, 2 of my young friends, one was a drug dealer,
Nope.
and he had had a conversion, and that got
Oh,
my
wow.
attention. Yeah,
Wow.
a Catholic drug dealer, of course. I
Mhm.
mean, he was
You still
raised
go to
Catholic.
mass.
Well, he was like myself, an Italian kid raised Catholic and, selling drugs, and, then another friend of mine was a Catholic kid, doing drugs and
Mm.
following the boys in the band kinda thing, and both of those people independently had profound encounters with Jesus, and I noticed the change in their lives, and so I started asking questions, and that led me to a charismatic Catholic prayer meeting, and a whole slew of people, hundreds of people had that joy, including priests, nuns, and people of every race and background and profession. And that made me realize it wasn't just a fluke of one or two people. This was something God was doing. I didn't know this was part of the normal Catholic package, and I found out that the reason it had been part of my package is because Jesus was not Lord. He was just kind of a part of my life. So I asked him to be the boss, and I asked the Holy Spirit, who I had received in baptism and confirmation, to really come alive and be the wind in my sails. And that really made a huge, huge difference. So that's kind of like how all that transition began.
So, you got your PhD in theology. So, what inspired that since you weren't a bookish guy?
Well, I really wanted to still be a professional musician after my conversion. It happened when I was a junior in high school, and that's when you're really thinking about college, right? So
Mhm.
I still applied to go to Berklee School of Music, which is the school that all the rock and roll guys go to. I mean, that's in Boston, and a
Uh-huh.
number of the guys in my band had gone there. That's all I wanted to do. And but I decided before I made that decision where I was gonna go, I better submit it to the Lord. So I was going to mass every day. I was sitting before the Blessed Sacrament. So I said, "Okay, Lord, you do want me to apply to Berkeley and to go do that, right? I mean, I just need a rubber stamp, Lord. I know this is what you want." And somehow I just felt like he was smiling at me, and I knew that wasn't what he had in mind. So I said, "Well, if that's not what I'm supposed to do, like what am I supposed to do?" And the word seminary popped into my mind, and I just
Mm.
tried to push it out of my mind as quickly as possible. No, no, you can't be at no, not that. I mean, not only they have to be single, but not only that they don't have to go to school for 4 years, they gotta go to school for 8. I mean I mean, seminary, how could I even get into seminary? So you have to understand my grades were B's, C's, and F's.
Oh, okay.
Mm.
Yeah, so I
Not
because
like
I did
Christina.
I never I ne no comment, no comment. If you wanna know any more about Christina, like, you have to bribe me, okay? So it's possible, but not for free, not on the podcast. But anyway, I didn't I said to the Lord, "Come on, like, if I get in, who's gonna let me in with these grades? And if I get in, how am I gonna pass?" The only way I've passed in high school in the past has been through cheating, and now I'm a Christian, I can't cheat anymore, I gotta be honest, so how am I gonna get through? So anyway, all these objections are flowing, and I felt like the Lord was just saying, "Well, why don't you give it a try? Why don't you apply to a couple of places?" So I dutifully applied to 2 seminaries expecting to get rejected, and
Mm.
if I got accepted, I couldn't afford it anyway, right?
Mm.
Well, I got accepted to both, and they both offered me money, so I knew I was God
Wow!
wanted me to go. Yeah, yeah. So anyway, I ended up going to college seminary, and I'm a fish out of water. All these guys clean cut, gone to Catholic high school, I'd gone to public, Anyway, all of a sudden, I fell in love with learning. Like, I
Mm.
just God gave me the appetite to learn, and I couldn't get enough of literature and history and philosophy and theology.
Wow.
And, I started my first report came in and it was like straight A's.
Look
Like,
at
it
you.
was, like, crazy. It was,
Well,
like,
maybe
nuts.
you
Huh?
just had to find what you were passionate
Right.
about.
The Lord turned it he flipped a switch, and I think that's I important. Like, honestly, my life, it was like a flip like a switch was flipped, and the whole world was now in color, and it had been in contrast prior to this, kind of in black and white. It was really a very amazing change in my consciousness, in my daily experience, in my appetites. I still love music, but, I didn't like the world. I had gotten enough of a taste of the bar and the club life and the drinking and all that stuff, and I really I didn't want that. I was attracted to prayer. I was attracted to the beauty of Christian fellowship, of brothers and sisters in the Lord who are different from me, but who love Jesus, and therefore we had more in common than a lot of the other folks that who, didn't love Jesus, that I had a lot of in common with when it comes to natural things. Anyway, everything kind of reoriented, but at the end of seminary, though I loved studying and I was prepared for theology, I discerned it was kind of a shock that I wasn't called to priesthood and to
Mhm.
religious life. I had planned to be a Franciscan. And so, anyway, I worked in a parish for a year. I worked in a factory alongside other people that I was ministering to from the Hispanic community. And then I discerned a call to be a lay theologian, and God worked that out. I had no money. It costs as much to get a theology degree as it does to get a medical degree if you're going to go for a PhD. And so God took care of that. I won a very rare fellowship at Catholic University of America and began my studies under Avery Cardinal Dulles. He wasn't a cardinal yet. He was famous, but not yet a cardinal. And anyway, I had these magnificent teachers that I sat at the feet of a lot of wonderful people. So it was great.
How did your family and friends respond to you going from playing in the club scene and playing music to then deciding to go to seminary?
Well, I lost a lot of my friends,
I
initially. I mean, some of
You
them
got
put up
new
with me for
ones.
a while. I remembered one of the guys in my band, the lead singer, said if I smoked a joint with him, he'd go to church with me. I didn't make that deal, but you have to understand this is the world I was in, right? So,
Yeah.
after a while, the guys I wasn't hanging out with the guys in the band anymore. The band broke up, and I declined to get involved in a new, reconfiguring of the band, and so, I kind of some folks just weren't interested. I mean, I invited everybody into my life, I didn't reject anybody, but some folk were interested, and I made new friends in Christ, and, those folks, when I decided to go in the seminary, they were all for it. My parents were all for it. And then when I decided not to continue on in the seminary, some folks were like, "What happened?" Anyway, it's kind of interesting ups and downs throughout this journey of the way people thought and felt about the various choices that I felt the Lord was leading me to make.
So when did you meet your wife?
Ways down the road, I was in Baltimore. I was hanging out with a bunch of people in Baltimore who love the Lord. It was another Catholic charismatic community up there, and, I was, living in DC, but on weekends and summers, I'd go and hang out with these folks, and my wife had a conversion, and she landed in this group of people, a very large group of single people who were passionate about Jesus, and actually, there were Protestants among them as well, so it was a mainly Catholic community, but it was ecumenical, and it was beautiful. But anyway, in that context, we were working in the same ministry, we were in the same social circles, and that's how we met, fell in love, and decided to get married.
That's awesome.
What's
Yeah.
a Catholic charismatic community? You said that a couple times. What does that look like to you?
Well, there's not as many, in the United States today that are as vibrant. Back in the '70s, it was an
Mhm.
explosive movement, and it still was into the '80s. And right now, most of the communities in the United States, are mainly older people. They stopped kind of attracting young people. One that you probably don't know much about, but you've heard about is the Community of Christ the Redeemer up in St. Paul, Minnesota. The two
Mm.
ministries that flow out of that that a lot of people have heard of is NET.
Yep. She's
Okay.
had
We have net missionaries coming this month for the
Okay.
middle
Well,
schoolers.
yeah.
that's a fruit of a Catholic charismatic community
Okay.
that has continued from the days of the '70s till today, has been healthy and has been outwardly focused in mission. And also St. Paul's Outreach, SPO,
Mhm.
flows from that community as well. So that community supports those 2 missions, plus some other, beautiful apostolates and missions that have an impact very widely in the church. So anyway, I'm very proud of those guys. There are other communities that I know of here in Dallas, the Community of God's Delight, which has a beautiful school that's one of their main apostolates. And there's also communities around the country, but anyway, around the world, internationally, that are healthy, that are alive, that I've been in touch with. So anyway, the movement has, in a certain kind of a way, become mainstream in that many permanent deacons, many people who are working in ministry, people, theologians like Mary Healy, for example.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, okay, these are people who have come out of that same movement that I've come out of. Deacon, there are very, a variety of people who are, coming out of that movement that are serving in the church today.
Well, I think that had a huge influence on the revival of Franciscan University, the
Oh,
charismatic
absolutely, absolutely. That's I'm really glad you mentioned that because, yeah, Franciscan is a fruit of that, ministry. In fact, I was asked to join the faculty early on
Mhm.
and, had to decline because it would have torpedoed a very important thing that I was engaged in at that time with EWTN.
Mhm.
And, yeah. I would just say also Mother Angelica was part of that movement, believe it or
Oh,
not.
interesting.
Yeah, yeah, and Mother Angelica and the early EWTN came out of the charismatic movement,
Mm.
and most people today don't really know that, but,
Well, and I
yeah,
think Encounter Ministries, which we have in our diocese, is
Right.
also charismatic.
absolutely, yeah,
Yeah.
it's another fruit. So there are many, many current fruits that just it's not flying the flag of Catholic charismatic renewal
Right.
community necessarily, but it's a fruit of
Mhm.
those early, communities and prayer groups around the country.
So explain Crossroads Initiative. You said it started as a band. How did it kind of morph into what it is today?
Well, great question. Fundamentally, the band came from 2 seminarians who had been Catholic,
Failed out.
theologically trained. Yeah, we had been professional rock musicians in our secular lives, went to
Wow.
seminary, had seminary training. We were doing campus ministry in Baltimore in the 19 early like 1980, 1981, and we realized that kids were not that interested in coming to theology seminars in addition to classes that they already had to go to all day,
Yeah.
but they were interested in music and refreshment and conversation and fellowship. So we put together events, and we had needed a band for the events, so the band was Crossroads. And the whole idea of Crossroads really was bringing people to a place of decision to go deeper with Christ in their life. And that's the imagery of Crossroads. And so it was really, theology, it was kind of like an early theology on tap.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So basically, but it had a band. And so we were the band and we were the speakers, and then we got invited to go elsewhere. So the band went on the road. We went to some other campus ministries. Then we started doing high school retreats and parishes would invite us and, various kinds. So anyway, we became multi-purpose, but it started as a campus ministry, theology on tap kind of a thing.
Wow.
And, yeah, and then down the road, a number of us had kids. It became difficult to do the travel. It was
Mhm.
time clearly to disband the band. So the 2 founders, myself and the other seminarian, he was a music writer, I was more of a teacher, and so, the Crossroads Initiative really was my educational ministry that flowed out of this 501(c)(3), apostolate that we founded. We actually founded a corporation, and, my partner really didn't do much on his end, and so the Crossroads Initiative was kind of like the educational kind of side of it, and it conti
Mhm.
we formed a website. I began doing speaking around the country, doing video work with Ascension Press, and doing some writing and stuff. So anyway, that's kind of how that, kind of developed. But I just say that the original vision of Crossroads was not just the ministry of me or this other guy or just teaching, but it was really a creative sharing of the gospel through all forms of media and the performing arts.
That's
And we just Crossroads just was a major partner in bringing a film, an
yeah.
amazing Catholic film, to the world, and that is,
Mhm.
The Triumph of the Heart on Maximilian
Mhm.
Kolbe. I was one of the executive producers. Crossroads helped raised a lot of the money. A lot of people wanted to give financially, and they needed to give it to a nonprofit organization, so we helped through grants to make that movie possible.
And that was written by your son.
It was written and directed by my son, Anthony D'Ambrosio. Yes,
Mhm.
indeed. Yeah.
Yeah. And then how did the pilgrimage side come out of like, when did that start, that idea of
Well, the whole idea of the gospel is an adventure. It's not about sitting around and just believing stuff. It's about getting up off your rear end and following Jesus and pursuing Jesus. So that's part of the message that comes from my own conversion. Honestly, a lot of people think religion's boring, and they're looking for adventure
Mhm.
in music and in parties and in career. You know what I mean? We're
Mhm.
built for adventure. Some look in sports. We're really built for adventure, but the gospel is about adventure. And that was like my discovery. Like, and so that was the message that we preached in the coffee houses that started our theology on tap. And that's a message that I continue to preach because it's central gospel message. And part of that pilgrimage is really is that. I mean, we're pursuing the Lord and we're expanding our horizons and we're going to places made holy by Jesus, but also by the apostles and by the saints. And so, anyway, in 1999, I was teaching at the University of Dallas, and all our undergraduates got the opportunity to go and study in Italy. They got a chance
Mm.
to do adventure as part of their study. Well, Father Mitch Pacwa and I were both teaching there, and we both said, "Hey, they're not letting the grad students have this opportunity, so we'll just make it. We'll
Yeah.
do a pilgrimage to Italy." And Marcellino, you're Doctor Italy, so you lead that one.
That's what I was gonna
Father
say, were you Doctor Italy at this point?
yeah,
How could
yeah,
she have
yeah. So
not
so
asked
I,
you to do that?
I really do love my Italian roots, and I love the history of the church in Italy. I'm named after a saint who gave his life in Rome. It's in the Roman canon, you know. Anyway, I led this combined trip of students. Basically, we had University of Dallas grad students come and take it as a course for credit. I was a professor of record. Father Mitch came along, um, and we had like 70 people. We did that in 1999, and then we said, "Hey, let's do it to the Holy Land." Father Mitch, you be the professor of record. You're the expert on the Holy Land. You know all the languages and all that stuff. I'll tag along. So I went to the Holy Land. We did that in Y2K. Okay. So, it w
Mm.
we were there during Y2K, and we figured that if everything shut down, the Bedouins would be the best hospitality hosts. They would have plenty of yogurt and lamb, and we would be fine with them. So anyway,
Perfect.
it all worked out. And so I've been doing it ever since as an opportunity for grad students, but also for anybody else who wants to come, and trying to provide spiritual and educational experience for people. So
Yeah.
I love that.
Well, I got to do that. So, previewing the revival, we're so glad that you're our headline speaker for that.
I'm so
Uh,
glad to be invited. Thank you for inviting me.
yeah, the theme is fully alive, which kind of plays into what you're talking about, is kind of what does it mean to be a Christian? And so the first night's on the great adventure of discipleship, which it seems like you're already previewing what that means.
Yeah. I have a story. I just wanna tell everybody, okay? The story I'm gonna tell on that first night, you will never if you come, you will never forget the story. I guarantee you, and your kids, if you bring kids, they will never forget the story. So it's
Okay.
amazing, it'll be an amazing evening for kids to come, particularly, I would say,
And that's Sunday night?
maybe not 5-year-olds, but, from 10 up, they'll get the story and they'll remember the story, and the story will make an impression.
Okay.
Well, I love to hear that. I do, the middle school program here and, after Christina, and we will have our middle schoolers and our
Oh,
high
yeah.
schoolers there. So,
Okay,
we meet on Sunday nights,
excellent.
and so our plan is to come hear the story. So,
Yeah.
Okay,
from 10 years old and up, they will
Mhm.
be there.
They will be there.
that's
Mhm.
excellent, excellent.
So Sunday night, March 8th, and then the second night's on the meaning of mercy.
Yeah, it's pretty important. Not only is John Paul II and Saint Faustina emphasized mercy, but also Pope Francis
Mhm.
was great on mercy. So anyway, we're going to talk about what mercy really means and what works of mercy really are, and find out maybe some creative ways to do works of mercy. Maybe ways that you haven't really thought about, but that everybody can do in the
Okay.
context of everyday life. Yeah.
And then the third one is how to thrive in your faith and not just survive, but thriving what it looks like to thrive in your faith.
Yeah. We're gonna talk about spiritual wellness. Wellness is a big word, right? So we're gonna
Yeah.
talk about that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think everyone will love it. Everyone will love it, and we'll get some more practical ideas. I love to, give people practical ideas that can actually be
Yeah.
things they can incorporate, and I think, honestly, that in talks 2 and 3, everybody who comes is gonna get something. The Holy Spirit's gonna light something up that I share that will be a great opportunity for change, something you can
Yeah.
incorporate in your life that's simple but really meaningful.
That's
Yeah,
great. And I mean, that's why we call it a revival.
awesome.
So to make it a full circle, Indiana's a crossroads of America. So
Mm.
to connect it to your crossroads initiative,
That's
one reason or another.
awesome! Hey, I love Indiana.
Well, we
Uh,
love that you're coming
yeah,
to see
we're very
us.
Thank you.
excited to see you in a month. But yeah, I love hearing your story. It's very inspiring, and you definitely exude joy. And I think the parishioners will enjoy seeing that joy on stage in a month.
Mhm.
Yeah, and just another thing I wanna tell people from the parish is that I think that humor is key, and I think that, honestly, living the gospel is fun, and
Hmm.
I think the Lord has a sense of humor, so you'll have a
True.
few laughs. I guarantee you every night you'll have a few laughs. So it won't be plodding and,
Yeah.
you know yeah.
Yeah. I don't know why people think faith has to be so serious all the time.
Well, yeah, to be really honest, I think a lot of people of faith have given him that impression, so it's our responsibility to
Mhm.
change that. So, let's
Yeah.
do it. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah, we
All
love to
right.
have fun, so we're excited.
Well,
Awesome.
thanks for taking the time to chat with us.
My pleasure. Thank you for interviewing me. Thanks for inviting me. I can't wait to meet everybody. So I just hope that everybody who comes will take time to hang out a little bit afterwards, and,
Yeah,
I'd love to
for
meet you
sure.
all. Yeah, I'd
Yeah,
love to
we'll
meet
have
you.
books for sale and lots of opportunity to ask questions and meet you. That will be great.
That'd be wonderful. I look forward to
Okay.
it. All right.
Thanks.
God bless. Bye-bye now.
Bye.